Hey everybody, welcome to Two Hearts Crochet. Today I'm going to show you a little intro on how to work a piece of filet crochet, which is really cool. It's probably my new favorite stitch. With it you can make some really cool graph designs that are really light and open, which is really good for lightweight blankets or even articles of clothing. For instance, this is the stitch we're using with the Nerdy Cardi, which will be coming soon. And that's actually what I have this graph here for. This is the back panel of the Nerdy Cardi. It's the Deathly Hallows square, hence the nerd. You can see I've got a little tiny design worked into the corner here. And that's actually the piece I'm going to show you today. This is just a sample piece. This graph for the Deathly Hallows is going to be available when the Nerdy Cardi is released. So keep an eye out for that. But in the meantime, we're just going to work with this little piece here. So you can see it's 5 blocks tall by 5 blocks wide. And this little sample piece here that we're going to do is really great for beginners because it's a mirror image of itself. So it doesn't matter which direction you start from, if you go from right to left or left to right. It's a mirror image, so it's going to look the same either way. Same actually for the Deathly Hallows square, which is why I picked it because it was my first filet crochet piece. And so it's really easy to do because you don't have to keep track of the arrows. You'll notice there are no arrows here. When this graph is actually released, I will be providing arrows for you just in case you need them. But in this case, you won't need them because there's mirror image here. So we're going to go ahead and get started here with our supplies. I got my graph, my tiny little graph. I've got a size G 4mm crochet hook, my new favorite size hook. I highly recommend this for the Nerdy Cardi and for lots of other projects. It's a really good size. It's also a really good size hook to use with this yarn here. This is a partially used skein of yarn. It's the Lion brand 24/7 cotton yarn in magenta. I've never used cotton yarn before now, but I will say that I absolutely love this yarn. It's working out really nicely for the Nerdy Cardi. I highly recommend it for your next project. I really, really like it. But we'll go ahead and get started here. I've just got my yarn here. One thing about this yarn is it does get a little bit twisty as you go, but just go slow and you can work with that. It's not really an issue. Excuse me. So one thing about the filet crochet, it's really easy. It's made up of double crochet stitches and chain stitches. The hardest part is probably getting your foundation row figured out, your foundation chain, however many stitches you need to do that. For instance, for our little square here that we're going to do, we've got 5 blocks wide. So for filet crochet, you figure out the number of blocks you want the width to be, and then you multiply that by 3. And then that, in this case, that would give us 15 stitches, 15 chains. And then you're going to need an additional 5 chains after that. So for this particular square, we're going to need a total of 20 chains. 15 is 5 times 3 plus 5 is 20. So we'll go ahead and do 20 chains for this. Let's go ahead and just leave a little bit of a tail there. Make my knot. And we'll just go ahead and chain 20. I really like this yarn. You can see it does get a little bit twisty there. Like I said, just kind of go slow with it. Your tension will change as you go, so it's not really an issue. As long as you're taking your time with it in the beginning, it's not going to change too much, so you won't have any real sizing problems later. But go ahead and count here. I lost count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. So there's our foundation chain. Looks kind of twisty with this yarn, but that's okay. And so for your first turning chain, I guess you're going to do, it's already built into that 20. That's what that extra 5 stitches is for. So what we're going to do is we're going to double crochet into the 8th chain space from the hook. I'm going to go ahead and yarn over and count back 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So right there is my 8th stitch, my 8th chain. So I'm going to go ahead and double crochet into that stitch. And I found that getting started is the hardest part. So go ahead and just work that double crochet, and there you go. You got a double crochet there. And then what you're going to do, you can see this is the very first block. This one right here. This is the first block of the graph. So what we're going to do is chain 2, 1 and 2, and then I'm going to yarn over, skip 2 chains. So here's where I worked the last double crochet. So we're going to skip this one, we're going to skip this one, we're going to work the double crochet into this one right here, right where my left thumb is pointing. So I've yarned over, I'm going to insert my hook into that chain and do the double crochet. And you can see we've got 2 blocks now. Pretty easy. The basics about the filet crochet, besides getting your foundation chain started, is that each block is worked open unless it's filled in on the graph. You can see in row 2, we've got 1 block here in the center that's filled in. So I'll show you how to do that when we get to that point. But we're going to keep working this first row with these open blocks. So again, we're just going to chain 2, 1 and 2, yarn over. I'm going to skip 2, skip that one, skip that one. Just going to double crochet here into that 3rd one, double crochet, and there's the 3rd block. And again, chain 2, skip 2, 1, 2, and double crochet. Now you'll be able to see we've got 4 blocks right there, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then we've got 3 chains, that's right. 3 chains left here, 1, 2, and 3. So we're just going to chain 2 more and then work a double crochet into the last chain stitch of that foundation chain. Maybe, if I can get the hook in. First row is always the hardest. It gets easier, I promise. My hook is very slippery. There we go. Okay, so there is our very first row. 5 blocks. Oh, paper cut. You can see we've got the very first row is 5 open blocks, and that's exactly what we did here with 5 open blocks of filet crochet. Now we're going to start row 2. Again, this is a mirror image graph. It's exactly the same from left to right, so you don't have to worry about which direction on the graph we're coming from. I'm going to just pretend like we're coming from the right here. So row 2, we've got 2 blocks of open, 1 closed block, and 2 more open blocks. So when we do an open block, when an open block is on the edge of the graph here, you always chain 5. Very easy. 2, 3, 4, and 5. If it was a closed block, you would chain 3. But with all of the graphs I'm going to make for the Nerdy Cardi, I'm going to keep it easy for you. I'm going to keep all of the sides up the graphs completely open. So you're always, for my graphs anyways, for the foreseeable future, you will be chaining 5 at the end of every row for your filet crochet. So we'll start row 2. I've got my 5 chains here, and that's going to make up the 3 chains for the turning chain, like you would with any double crochet row. And then the extra 2 chains are actually going to be this center part here, which is what makes the graph open, what makes the block open. So you got 3 turning chains and 2. You can kind of see, you get the picture there, how it kind of folds over. For the first 2 blocks of this row, they are open. So we chain 5. We're going to yarn over and we're going to insert our first double crochet of the row right here. You can see we've got this post here. Move my light a little bit. That's better. We've got this first block here, open space, and then we've got this post here. we're actually going to insert our first double crochet into that stitch right there. Basically, you are chaining 5, you're going to skip this one, so skip 2, and then double crochet into the third one, which happens to be right where the post was for the row below. Double crochet, and there you go. Now you've got 2 open blocks right on top of each other. You've got your chain 3 here, 1, 2, 3, and then there's your chain 2 there, and the double crochet. And again, the next block is also an open block, so we're going to chain 2, and then skip 2, skip 1, skip 2, and double crochet into that third stitch. And there you go. There's the first 2 blocks of this row. The next block is a closed block on our graph. So basically what we're going to do, start here, we're going to yarn over, we're going to double crochet into these 2 chains here that we've been skipping for the open blocks. So we're going to double crochet into the first one. We're going to yarn over and we're going to double crochet into the next one. And then we're going to work the last double crochet right above that post here from the row below. And there you go. Now you can see we've got 2 open blocks and 1 closed block. If you think about it, you've got, for each block, we've got 2 end posts, right? Here's an end post, here's an end post, and 2 stitches in between. For the open ones, the open blocks, it's going to be 2 chains. For the closed blocks, end post, 2 double crochets. So you can think of these blocks as sharing the 2 end posts with the next block over and having 2 stitches in the middle. Closed ones are double crochet, open ones are chains. If you can see that pattern, it gets pretty easy after that once you get going. I really like following the graphs. I think it's pretty straightforward once you get the hang of it. We'll go ahead and finish this row out now. So we've got 2 open blocks, a closed block, and then the last 2 blocks of this row are open as well. So we'll just chain 2. See, we're sharing, for this open block here, we're sharing this end post with the next block over. So we just chain 2, skip 2, and double crochet. And there you go, 1 more open block. We'll go ahead and finish that out. We got chain 2 more, skip 2 more. The last block of the row is a little bit tricky, especially with this particular yarn. It gets a little twisty, as I've said. So what I like to do is I yarn over, kind of get my tension right, and then I have a hard time counting the stitches. I don't know if it's lighting or my eyes or what, but I have a hard time counting from this direction. So I like to twist this post right here, just like that, and count from this direction. So we've yarned over, we've got our 2 chains on the hook there. We're going to go ahead and skip 2. So we're going to skip this one and skip this one and crochet into this one. Double crochet, I should say. There we go. Maybe. There we go. And double crochet. Pull my yarn out there, and there you have it. So we've got first row done, second row is 2 open, 1 closed, and 2 open. We'll go ahead and do the next row, give you a little bit better idea of how we're doing here. Again, we're chaining 5 at the end of every row. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. On the graph here, row 3, again, mirror image. I'm just coming at it from the right. First block is open, then we've got 3 closed, and another open one. So since the first one is an open one, we are going to yarn over and just hop on over to above where this post was. Basically skip those 2 chains, double crochet right there. And there's our first open block for that row. Now the next 3 blocks are closed, so we're going to double crochet in the next stitch, which is a chain stitch from the previous row. Again, double crochet in the next stitch, and then put the end post to double crochet above the other post. So you can see we can follow this post line. It gets a little wonky, but you can follow that up through the work. It's here, next row, all the way up. And that's what you want to keep your blocks nice and tidy and even. After you block your work, it should look really nice and tidy and a little bit less wonky. I think this is because the yarn's a little bit twisty as you work with it, and as you're turning every row, you've got some that slant one way and then the next time they'll slant the other way. But as you keep going, it'll even out a little bit, and then again, once you block it, it should look pretty good. Okay, next 2 rows are also closed blocks, or next 2 blocks are also closed blocks, so we'll go ahead and just double crochet 1, 2, and the third one in that end post. You can follow that up the line here. It's here, and it is, oops, here. We'll go ahead and do that again one more time. We're going to chain, no, not chain, this is a closed block, so we're going to double crochet in the next stitch, and work 1 more double crochet. Closed blocks are basically 3 double crochet. And there you go. So you can see we got 3 closed blocks. Now with the open blocks, it's really easy to see where the blocks are divided because you have this open space and then a post in between each of the open spaces. With the closed blocks, it's much less easy to see because you just have a solid bunch of double crochets. If you're trying to figure out where you're at on the graph, it's really easy if you count, instead of trying to count all these double crochets, just count from the open blocks. So I can say this is 1 row, say we were trying to count rows up this way, you can count 1, 2, 3, or you can count 1, 2, and then you can easily tell this is 1 row of double crochet, so 1, 2, 3, or you can do 1, 2, 3. It just depends on how you want to count it, I guess. But go ahead and finish off. We got 1 more block for this row, and it is an open block. So to start the open block, we chain 2, and then again, this is the last block of the round, so it's a little bit tricky. I'm going to rotate this post and count to the 3rd stitch, skip 1, 2, and double crochet in that 3rd one. And that gives us the 5th block of the row. We can see row 3 here. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 blocks. If you're wanting to count blocks with these double crochets, what I like to do is remember that each block is 2 posts. I'll draw it out for you. Each block is 2 posts, right? 2 posts and then 2 stitches. For the open blocks, it's the chains. For the closed blocks, it's double crochets. So you can see here, maybe it's easier to see on paper. If this was 2 blocks here, you've got an end post, 2 stitches, and an end post. We're sharing that end post with the next block, so then it's 2 more stitches and an end post, 2 more stitches and an end post, 2 more stitches and an end post. That didn't come out nice and straight because I was writing at an angle, but yeah, so you just share the end posts for each block. So if we wanted to count that out on this graph here, or on this work here, we've got an end post, 2 stitches, and an end post. Share the end post, 2 stitches, end post. Share that end post, 2 stitches, end post. share that end post, 2 stitches, end post, and again sharing that end post. We got 1, 2 stitches, and the last end post. And there you go. So you can kind of count that way. We'll go ahead and do the next couple rows. They're pretty much the same as before. Again, chaining 5 because we're at the end of that row. Turn your work, and then we're going to work the double crochet right above that last end post there. You can think of it as working that line of posts straight up, and just double crochet right into that. You can see that post goes all the way up. Or you can count if you really want, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, and just crochet 8 right there, double crochet. Next block is also open, so we chain 2, sharing that end post, skip 2, skip 1, 2, and double crochet into that third space. And again, you can see that post. It's a little bit wonky, like I said, but it goes all the way up. Next block's a closed one, so we're sharing that end post. We're gonna do 2 double crochets. There's 1. There's 1 in the next one. And we're gonna make the end post. There you go. You can see, I'm probably saying this a million times, but the more you can see it in your own work, the easier it is to understand how it works. But again, so we've got this open block here. We're going to share this end post. We've got 1, 2 stitches in between, and then another end post. The next 2 blocks for this row are open, so we chain 2, skip 2, double crochet, chain 2, skip 2, skip 1, 2, and double crochet. There you go. You can see our little design taking place. And the last row is just chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's all open. So we're just gonna double crochet. We're gonna chain 2, double crochet here. There we go. Chain 2, skip 2, skip 1, 2, double crochet, chain 2, double crochet, chain 2, skip 2, and double crochet. And there you go. There's our block. And you can see that little cross plus sign design there. And I'm not sure if it's the hook size or the yarn or what. It's not exactly square, which is why you can see on this Deathly Hallows graph, it's much taller than it is wide. It's 47 rows wide by 60 rows tall. Originally when I designed it, I didn't do that. I had it, I think it was 47 by 47, and it was not as tall as I needed it to be the back panel for the cardigan. So I added some rows to the top and bottom and got it to the length I needed to be. I don't have the piece up here to show you, but I will have pictures and you'll be able to see that whole back panel is square, even though the graph is not. And that's kind of what you want. If you're kind of experimenting with filet crochet yourself and you're needing a square panel, I recommend just kind of doing a little bit of a test and see how many extra blocks you might need to make your piece square. What I really like about this stitch is I did a little bit of a test before, and you know what, I'll show you here too. It's really easy to add rows to it if you need to. So if we wanted to make this a little bit more square, I would probably guess, and maybe when you block it, it'll be a little bit more square, but I would guess maybe add one more row along the top or the bottom, maybe even two. So you could just, chain 5 and do another row, see if you like it. You can cut your yarn, rejoin down at the bottom here and do another row if you need that. Say you need your piece to be a little bit wider. What I really like about this stitch is it looks really similar. If you're in a bind and you don't want to tear out all those hours of work, it looks really similar going this way as it does going this way. So say for instance, we have our piece here. I've worked this piece and say I wanted it, oh shoot, I need it to be one more row wide for whatever reason. I've got it, my yarn here. It doesn't matter if you've already cut your yarn or if you haven't yet. Just rejoin if you've already cut your yarn, but I would just put my hook back on here. I'm going to turn the work this way. I'm going to chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And just for argument's sake, let's just keep this last row open here. I'm just going to double crochet right where this post is here. I think it's a little bit tricky when you're going sideways like this, but just throw that on there. Just like that. Chain 2. Again, I'm just going to double crochet where this post is here. I'm going to keep going. Chain 2. Double crochet where this post is. It does, I'm not going to lie, it does get tricky when you go this way. You can do it. You can make the yarn work for you, but it's slippery and it's a little tricky. But really good if you're in a crunch and you need just that extra little bit. I probably wouldn't recommend doing this for a lot of rows because, again, what you're going to run into is the stitch is a little bit wider than it is tall, at least for me in this case. So if you rotate the piece and you start working up along the side, you're going to have a little bit wider stitches than they are tall this way. So for instance, you can see here, I just finished that one. We've added a whole nother row. It looks pretty similar. You can't really tell that you went the other direction here, which is really cool. But again, our stitches are a little bit wider this way than they are tall. And so what's gonna end up happening is if you keep doing that, you're gonna have a piece or a section of your piece that's wider than the rest of it is tall. And so you're gonna end up with this kind of shape here, kind of like this. If this is your piece and this is your extra little bit that you added on, it's gonna be a little bit wider here. But that's okay. If you need to add an extra row or two, go for it. I think that's better than having to tear the whole thing out personally. But yeah, there you go. There's your basic filet crochet. It's really easy. Chain stitches and double crochets. I really like it. What I really like is you can use these graphs and make something entirely your own. It's really cool. You are limited, at least as far as I know, you are limited to the one color, but I think that makes it really cool because it's what I like to call geek incognito. So it's nerdy, but you're not necessarily shouting your nerdiness from the rooftops. You're gonna have to look for the nerdy aspects of the nerdy cardi. Otherwise, it'll just look like a really pretty little cardigan that you're wearing, especially with this color. I know they got a bunch of other colors that are really cool too. So I'd love to see somebody work up their nerdy cardi in some other colors. But this is what my store had, so I bought it, and I'm totally head over heels in love with this yarn, even if it does get a little bit twisty on its own. But like I said, it works out in the end. So that's kind of an introduction to filet crochet. Again, my nerdy cardi graphs will have arrows. Obviously, some of them will not be mirror image, so you'll want to pay attention to the arrows. In the case of this Deathly Hallows square and our little sample square, you don't have to worry about that. But anyways, that's filet crochet. And let me know if you have any questions. Just my advice is to just be really slow at the beginning. Take your time with it. Count your blocks. Pay really close attention to your stitches. Take it from me, you don't want to figure out that you've mysteriously added an extra row or an extra block 4 rows down, especially when your rows are 47 blocks wide. Takes a lot of time to go back and do that. I noticed my most common mistake was I would chain 2. I'll show you. I would chain 2, forget what I was doing, and double crochet in this same stitch. And then I would chain 2 more and keep going, double crochet in the next spot you're supposed to. And what that ends up doing, you'll notice, is it creates a V. And what you've done is you've created this tiny little extra block space, which you don't want because then your count is off. For instance, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks down here, and now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 blocks up here. It's going to throw you off. So go slow, keep an eye out for that, and then just take your time with it and it'll come together. It's easier once you get going. You get the hang of it, but I'm fairly new to this stitch, but I really, really like it, and I hope you do too. If you have any questions, just holler at me. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.